Many people believe when we die, we just die, right? Some might believe that we linger as a lost spirit. Others believe we pass on to the next life. But most agree that even if we linger in this world, we can't do much. Can we? What if we could still send emails? What if we could communicate directly with those closest to us? How would you use such an ability? Would you provide comfort to your loved ones, or use it to cause discord among all that knew you? In tonight's video, we dive into a case where a supposedly deceased man was able to continue communication with others via email. Is it possible for our souls to exist in a manner that will allow us to send emails to others? In today's video, we explore that very idea. This is the case of Jack Froese. Before we begin, I'd like to personally thank all of our subscribers and commenters. It means a lot to me to see that this channel is growing and hear from everyone about how I'm doing. I try to respond to everyone, but just know that if I don't get to you, I read all the comments, so whether you're watching this from the day it premieres, a week later, or years from when I make this video, I want to say thank you for my success. Now, on to the video. Most of us see death as something that is completely final, something that we may never come back from, something that ends our existence with the world of living. Many religions believe in an afterlife, and others believe in reincarnation. And some believe in spirits lingering upon the earth, unable to pass on for whatever reason. I'm not here to judge whatever you believe, and I firmly believe that everyone should believe what makes sense to them. After all, faith is inherently a very personal thing. But consider this. If you somehow lingered in this world, what do you imagine is the scope of what you could do? Do you think you could send messages to the world of living? How about write entire emails? Well, that's exactly what happened to the family of Jack Froese, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. But they continue to receive messages from a man who, for all intents and purposes, should have been far from able to send any messages at all. Tonight we dive into those messages in the bizarre case of Jack Froese and his strange, mysterious after-death emails. Jack was born on December 15th, 1978, in a small town in Pennsylvania. Jack would grow up there and eventually get a degree in sound recording in a nearby community college in his early adult life. He was into motorcycles and music. He even played in a few local bands. A father of two, Jack married relatively young and lived with his family in Dunmore, Pennsylvania. Jack was said to be a man with a big personality and was loved by many, and that's why it came as such a tragic shock to those around him when he died abruptly at the age of 32 in June of 2011. Jack had suffered from a heart arrhythmia, which is a condition where the heart's beat is irregular and can cause serious health problems, or in Jack's case, death. His family and friends mourned Jack for months, but it seemed as though just when they had finally been able to accept that Jack was gone from their lives, Jack would return, but not in the way that any of them would have expected. Jack Froese was undeniably dead. After all, his friends and family attended his funeral, and even some witnessed his passing. Usually when people are dead, that is how they stay, but that's not apparently what happened for Jack. One of Jack's close friends, Tim Hart, was having a quiet evening in his home in November of 2011. This would be around 5 months after Jack's passing, so he was a little surprised that when he went through his emails that night, he would find one from Jack's known email address. Now, it's well known that it's possible and quite easy to set up your email to send out messages at scheduled times, but in this case, it definitely wasn't the case, as the later emails will also prove. The email in question had the subject line of, "I'm watching," which is already eerie enough, but the contents were far stranger and a far cry from what usually expected of otherwise fun-loving and harmless Jack.
"Did you hear me? I'm at your house. Clean your effing attic."
The message definitely has somewhat of a threatening tone to it, and it doesn't seem to be something that Jack would say based upon how his friends and family described him, especially toward Tim Hart, who was Jack's childhood best friend. Prior to Jack's death, he and Tim had been in Tim's attic contemplating what to do with the space. This means that only Jack would have known about the state of Tim's attic. The two of them spent much time in Tim's large attic, and the last time he had visited, he had commented on how dirty it was, and even offered to clean it for Tim. Curious, Tim sent a response to the email, but as you may have guessed, never got a reply. If Jack had somehow sent the email, it was clear he either wasn't interested in or able to respond back. Now, this would be weird enough on its own, but it gets weirder. Jimmy McGraw was Jack's cousin, and like Tim, he also received an email from Jack long after his death, though his email was far more strange. The email was also sent in November with the simple subject line of, "Hey Jim." The email reads as following.
How you doing? I knew you were gonna break your ankle. Tried to warn you. Gotta be careful. Tell Rock for me. Great song. You're welcome. Couldn't get through to him. His email didn't work.
So, naturally, I'm sure most watching this video can tell that this email has a lot of specifics that only someone who knew Jim could possibly know. Remember, by this point, Jack was deceased for over 5 months. Jim had actually broken his ankle only a week prior to receiving the email in November, so it would have been impossible for Jack to have set the email to send automatically. So, who sent this email? Was it really Jack from beyond the grave? So, I'm sure many people are going to instantly assume this is some kind of hacker who is just messing with the family. And while ordinarily I would say that is the most sound idea, the problem is the emails mention specifics that only someone who knew Jack fairly well would possibly be able to know. Take note of the second email specifically. Jack not only mentions his cousin's broken ankle, which would mean that whoever sent the email had to know that Jim broke his ankle, but he mentions someone they refer to as Rock, which sounds like some kind of nickname. What are the odds that some random hacker knew this much about Jack and his cousin Jim? There is a more sinister idea behind this theory though. If the supposed hacker is also someone stalking Jack's family and friends and thus is privy to such information, could such a thing be possible? Jack's friends and family all insist that no one knew his passwords, and they themselves are convinced that this is not the work of a hacker. Tim Hart proposed the idea that Jack's mother was actually the one sending the emails, and it is quite possible because when he confronted her on it, instead of denying it, she stated, "Think what you want about it, or accept it as a gift." Not exactly an admission of guilt, but definitely a weird response to give when confronted about something of this nature, wouldn't you think? I'm sure most would agree with that. Was it possible that she did this as some kind of way for Jack's friends and family to feel close to him again? Well, the problem with that theory is that the messages themselves weren't inherently very comforting. If anything, they were somewhat neutral and in some cases maybe even hostile, depending on your perspective. A comforting message would have been something like telling his family and friends that he's in a better place or that he still loves them, something like that. Not something as mundane as telling them to clean out their attic. Not to mention, if her goal was to bring them any kind of comfort, why wouldn't she respond? Furthermore, why did she wait specifically until 5 months after his passing? Most people would have been past the main stage of grieving by then, so doing something like this would only usually bring the people back to a state where their painful memory of Jack's passing would resurface. This entire thing just seems counterintuitive if that's the case. Not to mention, this doesn't exactly seem like something an elderly woman would likely do, or even know how to do in the first place. Another major theory, though, is that perhaps a service that sends emails out after people's deaths from their own email address was used. Such services do exist, and they're designed to bring some sort of comfort to the loved ones of the deceased, or pass on messages that they intended them to learn at a different time. There's 2 major problems with this theory, though. Most of these services are set up well in advance, usually by people who know they're dying soon, or they're incredibly old and feeble to where they know that they're going to die relatively soon. Jack was extremely young when he died. After all, he was only 32, and his death was very sudden and untimely. It would be unlikely that he would use such a service. Furthermore, even if he did, why would he send an email out to be sent in 2011 when he would still be in his young 30s? Jack could have not have predicted his own death. Could he? It is possible that Jack had planned to die by some other means, but that also just seems unlikely given the circumstances. Jack's death was caused by a problem that is rare to detect in advance, and of course there are no records that he knew of his condition. After all, if he did, chances are he probably would have sought some kind of treatment. Secondly, Jack's emails had details that he would have no way of knowing after his death, and it's extremely unlikely that the people running the service would have known these details either. Even if they did, I doubt they would put them in. The only theory that technically can work is that, well, Jack himself is sending the emails from beyond the grave. If that is the case, perhaps the amount of spiritual energy needed to do so is so great that he couldn't send out replies. I'm sure that many of you would think that such a thing happening would be very traumatic and possibly angering to the family and friends of Jack. After all, there was a possibility that someone among them, or even a complete stranger, was playing some kind of twisted joke on them. I'm sure the most of us would actually react quite negatively. In actuality, though, Jack's family and friends actually find the emails quite comforting and are glad to actually have received them. They have stated it makes them feel closer to him even after his death. Tim Hart even said, and I quote, "If someone is messing around, I don't care. I take it for what I want." It's at least good that the messages have some kind of positive effects on Jack's loved ones, rather than be some kind of traumatic experience for them. Most of us will probably agree that we all would likely have mixed feelings about an event like this happening to us, so it's nice to see at least some positivity in the end, regardless of how strange it is. At the end of the day, no one is quite sure what is going on, and given that the incident was over 11 years ago at the time of creating this video, I highly doubt anyone is going to find out. But maybe it's better that way. Jack's family and friends can continue to have their positive feelings about the messages, and no one has to learn the potentially terrible truth that someone is either playing a prank on them, or a stalker could have been messing with them, or possibly some other sinister possibility. It's better that, in this case, it could just be Jack sending them messages from beyond the grave. Jack reaching out after death is the best outcome here, ironically. Who knows, maybe some of us will be able to send messages to those we love after we're gone. Or maybe we'll be the recipients of some. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Make sure you like this video and leave a comment. Feedback always helps me when making future content. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos like this one. And you can also check out some of my older videos as well. The channel is still young, but you can expect much more videos in the future. We're growing every day, and I plan on making more content as steadily as I can. I'm CLO Wisp, reminding you that curiosity of the unknown can often wisp us away.